All right, hello, hi, good evening. Am I audible to all of you? Please let me know. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear me. Hi. Hi, Divyanshu, Neha, Zara, Moksham, Srishti. Hi, Astha, Tanmay. All right. I am audible, clearly visible to all of you. Great, then perfect. We can get started. Now today's session is going to be all about how to analyze a poem. So before we get started, tell me honestly, how many of you actually like poetry? How many of you enjoy reading, reciting, or maybe even writing poems? And the opposite as well. Tell me how many of you absolutely hate poetry, how many of you don't understand it and don't know why it exists. All right. Hi, hello to all of you joining in. This is for both 9th and 10th. This session will help you understand how you can analyze the poems that are in your syllabus. Yeah, okay, Vipin does not like, Durga does not like. Satish likes. Hi, good evening. Okay, so a lot of us don't like poetry because we don't understand the beauty of it. And it's actually very simple to understand. Poems are just a way of expressing in a structured manner, in a constraint, under a constraint. So, a lot of times जब आपको full freedom होती है कि आप कुछ भी बोलो, you start rambling, okay? And your thoughts just keep coming and coming and coming, and you're saying things, you're going on tangents, यहाँ से वहाँ से यहाँ से वहाँ. That tends to happen, right? The thing with poetry is you are under so many constraints. You have to follow a particular structure, you have to follow a rhyme scheme, you need to make sure that everything sounds like it's in a meter. Because of all these constraints, the thoughts that you actually put across is very clear. It actually hits the nail on the head, and the person who's reading it is able to understand it. And the thing with poetry is because you have so many constraints, you make use of a lot of other things that really appeal to human emotions, like poetic devices. You compare different things, you try to make analogies, you use metaphors, you use imagery, and all these things really enhance understanding, because a lot of times just direct general words fall short. When I tell you something plainly and simply, it won't appeal to you as much. But if I tell you something that touches a chord in your heart, that makes you relate the emotion that I'm trying to convey with an emotion that maybe you have felt in your life, then it will appeal to you a lot more, okay? So that's why poetry is a wonderful thing. It's a wonderful mode of expression. And once you understand how you can analyze it, it will become that much more appealing to you. And there's poetry in every language. Okay, so even if you don't like it in English, maybe you like it in your mother tongue. Correct? So, हर language में आप poetry enjoy कर सकते हो. Basics of poetry will remain the same. There will be a structure, there will be a meter. Okay, there'll be rhyming in it, there'll be use of a lot of figurative language, and it'll feel very emotional to you once you understand it, okay? और अगर आपको लगता है that you're the only ones who cannot understand poetry, that's not true. बहुत सारे लोग डिबेट करते हैं कि किसी पोएम का मतलब क्या है, and this happens with every art. Art is open to interpretation. What does that mean? That it can mean something different to you, it can mean something different to me. Okay, so even though the poet, the author, or the painter has a specific idea in mind and they put it down for everybody to see, what you understand might be different from what the poet or the painter imagined, and what I understand can be different from what you understand. So a lot of art is always open to interpretation, and a lot of famous poems are always being debated कि इसका मतलब actually में है क्या. Okay, so let's understand how to analyze poems. The basic things that you can look at is what the rhyme scheme is. Very easy to spot. We'll take a look at it. What are some of the poetic devices that are used? So we'll briefly go over some of the most common poetic devices that are used. We'll have some sample poetries that we'll analyze. So we'll go through some famous poems, and after analyzing the sample poetry, we will come to our conclusion, what we've learned from this session. Okay? So this is not going to be a very कि मैं आपके syllabus से उठा के question answers करूँ. Although there are some poems in the session that are from your syllabus, especially 10th के syllabus से तो है. But the point of this session, the reason why we are here today is not to रट्टोफाई कि हमारे सिलेबस की पोएम्स में क्या क्या पोएटिक डिवाइसेस यूज हुए हैं, क्या क्या राइम स्कीम है. नो, इट्स कि आपके सामने कोई भी पोएम आ जाए, आप उसको कैसे एनालाइज करोगे. ओके, all right. So what are you going to do to analyze a poem properly? First, you're going to read the poem multiple times. The first time you read a poem, especially अगर वो थोड़ी पुरानी पोएम है जिसमें थोड़ी पुरानी इंग्लिश यूज की हो, वो समझ में नहीं आएगी. तो आपका जो फर्स्ट रीडिंग है, इट्स जस्ट बेसिकली बेसिक अंडरस्टैंडिंग के लिए है. और उसको जब आप दोबारा पढ़ोगे तब आपको उसमें जो बारीकियां हैं वो समझ में आएंगी. सो द फर्स्ट रीडिंग ऑफ अ पोएम इज जस्ट अंडरस्टैंडिंग द skeleton. And then the second reading, you go a layer deeper. Third reading, you go a layer deeper. There are some poems, even if you read them 50 times, there'll be something new that you'll find that you hadn't realized before. Okay? So, reading a poem once is never enough. If you read it once and you think you understood it completely, that's not the case. You'll always find something new when you keep reading it. Okay? Next, you need to identify the speaker. Is the speaker the poet herself? Is it somebody else? Has the speaker been established in the poem, or is it open to your interpretation? Okay, so these things you need to understand. All right, next thing, you will define the theme. The theme, why? The only question you need to ask here is, why was this poem written? What is it trying to convey? Okay, what kind of an image has it created in your mind? From that you will understand the theme of the poem. Then you will analyze the title. A lot of times the title gives us a lot of information, a lot of times it doesn't. Sometimes you have cryptic titles to just catch the attention of the reader or the listener. Okay, so then you analyze the title, see if that gives you some information. Another thing I would like to add over here is, apart from identifying the speaker, you should know a little bit about the poet. If you know about the history of the poet, what kind of a person the poet was, what kind of ideologies they subscribe to, then you will understand the poem better. Okay, for example, there's a poem called The Trees, okay, in your 10th ka syllabus, which you might not be able to understand if you don't know about the poet. But when you actually read about the poet and how her life has been, what her political ideologies were, then it makes you understand that The Trees is actually a feminist poem. Okay, so knowing about the poet can also enhance your understanding of the poetry. Okay, then you're going to examine the structure. मतलब आप पोएम में घुसो ना तो इतना डीप जाता है कि आपको सिलेबल्स देखने पड़ते हैं, सिलेबल्स का स्ट्रेस देखना पड़ता है कि किस सिलेबल पे स्ट्रेस पड़ रहा है. उससे आपको फुट पता चलता है, कितने फुट यूज होते हैं, उससे आपको मीटर पता चलता है. और आपने सुना होगा, सम ऑफ यू माइट हैव हर्ड दैट शेक्सपियर रोट एवरीथिंग इन द आयम्बिक पेंटामीटर, एंड यू मस्ट बी वेरी वेरी कंफ्यूज कि आयम्बिक पेंटामीटर क्या है. तो अगर आप पोएट्री की स्टडी में जाओगे तो वो इतनी डीप जाती है दैट वी हैव ओनली स्क्रैच्ड द सर्फेस. हम लोग जो एग्जाम्स के लिए पढ़ते हैं, वी हैव ओनली स्क्रैच द सर्फेस. पोएट्री इज सच अ डीप स्टडी. ओके, सो हम लोग वो सब इतना डिटेल में नहीं करने वाले, बिकॉज दैट्स नॉट इम्पॉर्टेंट फ्रॉम द पर्पज ऑफ योर एग्जाम. बट इफ यू विश टू नो मोर अबाउट पोएट्री, यूज योर टाइम एंड यू कैन एक्चुअली फाइंड आउट मीटर क्या होता है, पेंटामीटर क्या होता है, आयम्प क्या होता है, आयम्बिक पेंटामीटर क्या होता है. देयर इज अ लॉट दैट यू कैन स्टडी व्हेन इट कम्स टू पोएट्री. ओके, देन after examining the structure, what kind of a poem it is, we are going to explore the imagery and symbolism used in it. Now, imagery, आपको word से ही समझ में आ जाना चाहिए that whatever image is created in your mind, if it's very vivid, if it's very detailed, that means the poet has made good use of imagery. Image से imagery बन रहा है. Poet is trying to paint a picture using words. That is imagery. Okay? And symbolism is when you use certain things to represent a bigger idea. When you use certain symbols to represent a bigger idea. Okay? Then you're going to consider the tone and the mood. Now tone और mood आप अपनी life में सोच के देखो. आपका mood खराब होता है तो आपकी tone कैसी हो जाती है. अगर आप irritated हो गुस्से के मूड में हो, थोड़े इरिटेशन के मूड में हो, तो आपकी टोन कैसी हो जाएगी? गुस्से वाली हो जाएगी। आप किस टाइप के वर्ड्स यूज करोगे? गुस्सा एक्सप्रेस करने वाले वर्ड्स यूज करोगे। अगर आपका मूड बहुत अच्छा है, आप बहुत खुश हो, तो आप किस टाइप की टोन यूज करोगे? हैप्पी टोन यूज करोगे। किस टाइप की वोकैबुलरी यूज करोगे? अच्छे वर्ड्स वाली वोकैबुलरी यूज करोगे। इफ यू आर डिप्रेस्ड, इफ यू आर सैड, एंड इफ यू आर ट्राइंग टू टॉक टू समबडी अबाउट दैट सैडनेस, what kind of a mood are you in? You're in a depressed mood or a sad mood. What kind of a tone will you have? You'll have a sad tone, which means you will use what kind of vocabulary? Vocabulary that helps you express your sadness. So tone और mood उसी से relate करो कि poem का mood क्या है, what is it. ये आपको theme से भी थोड़ा बहुत relate आप इसको कर सकते हो कि poet का mood क्या है. वो एक सैड मूड क्रिएट करने की कोशिश करे, होपफुल. लॉट ऑफ पोएट्री जो मोटिवेशनल होती है, जो आपको मोटिवेट करने की कोशिश करती है, उसमें बहुत ही होपफुल सा मूड होता है, बहुत ही होपफुल सी टोन होती है. वर्ड्स भी ऐसे यूज हुए होते हैं, करेक्ट. एंड अगर पोएट कुछ एकदम फियर्स गुस्से वाला एक्सप्रेस करना चाहता है, जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल जो रिबेलियन या इंडिपेंडेंस के टाइम पे पोएट्री लिखी गई थी कि सबको संघर्ष करना है साथ में, तो उसमें बहुत ही फियर्स टोन यूज होती है, बहुत ही वो रिबेलियन वाली टोन यूज होती है. ओके, सो बाय अंडरस्टैंडिंग द इंटेंट of the poem you can understand the tone and the mood easily. Okay, now figurative language interpret karna is not very difficult, but it can sometimes get very confusing. All you need to do is you need to know your different poetic devices and try to see कि कहाँ पे वो कहाँ fit हो रहे. Okay, all right, now see, whatever doubts you have right now related to what we are doing, please try to focus on that. We can take some time towards the end to focus on other doubts, because if you ask me other doubts in the middle which are very unrelated to this, everybody else who are watching this will get distracted, correct? So we'll take 5 minutes at the end to answer all your other doubts. Okay, all right, have I written any poems? Yes, as a matter of fact I have. Maybe one day we can share our poetry with each other. Okay, next, analyze the word choice. This also is somewhat related to the tone. What kind of a tone is the poet trying to create? Accordingly, they will use certain words. There are certain words that you know have a positive effect, certain words that you know have a negative effect. Okay, just analyze that vocabulary and see कि ज़्यादा किस type के words use हुए हैं. Okay, and lastly, explore sound and rhythm. Now ये rhythm सारा मीटर से आता है, इसको इतना डिटेल में हमें अभी स्टडी करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. और sound और rhythm में एक और चीज़ का यूज़ होता है जो आप figurative language से रिलेट कर सकते हो, जो कि है alliteration. So alliteration की वजह से कभी कभार हम लोग बहुत ही rhythmic sentences बना लेते हैं. Okay, so we'll take care of all of that अभी in the session. We'll look at everything and then we'll take a look at some famous poems. Okay, all right. So number 1, rhyme scheme, the repetition of similar sounds at the end of 2 or more words. Now this is what gives you the idea that this is a poem, कि उसमें rhyming words है कि नहीं. सबसे there are poems, कोई मुझे बता सकते हैं ऐसी poem को क्या बोलते हैं जिसमें कोई rhyming words नहीं होते हैं, या जिसमें कोई rhyming words हो सकते हैं लेकिन rhyme scheme particularly follow नहीं हो रही. Who is going to tell me quickly what that kind of a poem is called? Very good, comfy studies. It's called free verse. Yes, Sonakshi, great job. So when you don't follow a certain rhyme scheme, then we call it a free verse. That's also a kind of poetry, don't get me wrong. But the easiest way to identify a poem is to understand that it has a rhyme scheme. Okay, so let's take a look at the common rhyme schemes and how you can classify and categorize poems based on their rhyme scheme. Okay, so you can have an alternate rhyme where you just have a very simple A B rhyme scheme, जिसमें क्या हो रहा है, A और A दोनों rhyming words हैं और B और B दोनों rhyming words हैं. Okay, और एकदम ही simple poem जैसे for example if you take twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high like a diamond in the sky. इसमें क्या हो रहा है, twinkle twinkle little star, how I wonder what you are, up above the world so high like a diamond in the sky. So this you can say AABB is the simplest form of rhyme scheme. And then थोड़ा सा और complicate करोगे तो आप alternate rhyme scheme use कर सकते हो, which is A, B, A, B. Every alternate sentence rhymes with each other, okay? And then you have a ballad, which can be spelled without E also. So ballad is, can you give me an example of a ballad from 10th standard ka syllabus? Who can give me an example of a ballad or a poem that's written in the style of a ballad? It might not be a traditional ballad, but it's written in the style of a ballad. Who knows this? No, it's not Amanda. It's not. It's The Tale of Custard the Dragon. That's written in the style of a ballad. So ballads were a lyrical poems that followed this particular rhyme scheme, and they often, so it's A, B, A, B, B, C, B, C. And then you have a 4-line stanza at the end. And what will give you an idea that this is a ballad? It's usually it'll be a heroic tale of somebody. तो वो एक पूरी story सुना रहे होंगे through that ballad of a very big event that happened or about a very heroic person who did something. Okay? Alright. Then you have coupled rhyme. इसको हम कैसे समझ सकते हैं? किसी को पता है शायरी क्या होती है? शायरी में जो हम शेर बोलते हैं, वो शेर कपल्ड राइम की तरह है. ठीक है? उसमें 2 लाइनें होंगी और दोनों के एंड में वो राइम कर रहे होंगे. ठीक है? तो coupled rhyme is like a शेर. Okay? And this can be the entire poem itself or it can come in a poem. So जरूरी नहीं है कि एक पोएम में एक ही राइम स्कीम फॉलो हो रही हो. डिफरेंट राइम स्कीम्स भी फॉलो हो सकती है और एंड में आपके पास एक कपल्ड राइम भी आ सकता है, which happens in sonnets. Sonnets में ये देखने को मिलता है. Okay? All right. And then you have an alternate rhyme. In an alternate rhyme, the first and third lines rhyme at the end and the second and fourth lines rhyme. So instead of trying to figure out and do the maths, वो मीम याद आ रही है जिसमें सारे equations आपके सर के आसपास घूम रहे होते हैं, वो उतना confuse होने की जरूरत नहीं है. Just उसका ABAB format में, letters के format में जब आप देखोगे तो easily आपको rhyme scheme समझ में आ जाएगा. Okay? And then you have free verse, which is a poem without any particular rhyme scheme. All right, now here's an example of a rhyme scheme. This is a very famous poem, The Road Not Taken. Okay, and a lot of you should know this poem. Are you a lefty? Yes, I'm a lefty. Okay, so then took the other as just as fair and having perhaps the better claim because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same. What is, class 9 वाले बच्चों बताओ मुझे, what is the rhyme scheme of this poem? Class 10 वाले भी बता सकते हैं. What is the rhyme scheme in this poem? Who's gonna give me the correct answer? Okay, very good. Arnav Singh Rajawat. Oh, very good. Yes, this is The Road Not Taken and very correctly pointed out by Arnav. Great job. The rhyme scheme is ABAAB. Fantastic. Okay. Now here's another poem. Class 10 folks, you should know this poem. What is the rhyme scheme being used here? If strolling forth a beast you view, whose hide with spots is peppered, as soon as he is leapt on you, you'll know it's the leopard. 'Twill do you no good to roar with pain, he'll only leap and leap again. Very good. Ambition Success has given me the answer correctly, pointed out by Ambition Success. It's ABAB. तो पहले वो alternate कर रहा है और end में आपके पास एक couplet rhyme आ गया. Okay? So first it's alternating and in the end you have a couplet. Okay? Perfect. Now let's take a look at a brilliant, very, very famous poem over here. For those of you who don't know and would like to know, this is sonnet number 18 by William Shakespeare. And it has a name, it's very famous. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Okay, so you can take a look at this poem online if you want to read all of it. Because it's Shakespeare, it's going to be hard to understand, it's going to be difficult to understand. I don't want you to tell me the rhyme scheme. I just want you to tell me what the rhyming couplet is. What is the coupled rhyme? What is the coupled rhyme in this? Okay, Kaushal has given me the answer. Little Star has given me the answer. Very good, Kaushal. The coupled rhyme is right in the end, and this is what makes the sonnet so famous. So the last two lines are saying, so long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. So the sonnet is actually about comparing the person that Shakespeare is talking about, the poet is talking about, to a summer's day, and how a summer's day will fade away, it will go away, summer will go away soon, and all of that is being mentioned over here. Okay, that the summer might go away, but thy eternal summer shall not fade. And the reason why thy eternal summer shall not fade, why you shall not fade away, is because I have immortalized you through this sonnet. So these two lines are saying, till the time that this sonnet exists, till the time that people exist, till the time that they are reading this, you are immortalized. You become immortal. Okay? Sonnet is just a style of writing a poetry. Okay? It has specific rules that you need to follow that make it a sonnet. Shakespeare's written a lot of sonnets. Who can tell me how many sonnets? This is sonnet number 18 only. How many sonnets did Shakespeare write? That we have access to at least. जल्दी से सर्च करके भी बता सकते हो. Let's see who gives me the answer. It's more than 100 actually, Varun. It's more than 100. Yes! Prameksha has given me the correct answer. Very good, Prameksha. And Comfy Studies coming next, okay? Little Star, this is just... See, English is a fluid language. It will keep changing. The English that we speak today will also change substantially. So 100 years, 200 years down the line, when people read the works that were written in our generation, in our era, they're going to sound very odd to them because the way they speak English, the kind of vocabulary they use, would have undergone a considerable amount of change. So that's what happens with language. It keeps changing. It's fluid. तो तब की language ऐसी थी, इसीलिए हमें इतनी दिक्कत होती है Shakespeare समझने में. It's so complicated. Okay, great. All right. And a sonnet, for those of you who are asking, generally has 14 lines, I believe, and a coupled rhyme at the end of it. Okay. All right. Perfect. This was our coupled rhyme at the end. Now, quickly, let's take a look at some common poetic devices that are generally used in poetry. Now, I've already told you that the reason why poetic devices are used is so that you can appeal to the emotions instead of using bland words to express everything exactly as it is, which is what we do in science, where you have to be very particular about what you're saying. There cannot be any ambiguity. साइंस और इमोशंस में तभी फ़र्क है ना, साइंस और आर्ट में तभी फ़र्क है. साइंस में आप क्लियरली एग्जैक्टली उसको वैसे ही बताओगे जैसे आपको दिख रहा है. वॉट एवर यू आर ऑब्जर्विंग, यू आर डिस्क्राइबिंग इट एग्जैक्टली एज यू सी इट. बट अ लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स द इमोशंस दैट वी फील आर कॉन्फ्लिक्टेड. वी डोंट नो एग्जैक्टली हाउ वी फील अ लॉट ऑफ डिफरेंट थिंग्स. इमोशंस आर ऑलवेज ऑन अ स्पेक्ट्रम एंड आवर इमोशंस आर नॉट वेरी ईजी टू अंडरस्टैंड. हमें कभी कभार खुद भी नहीं समझ में आ रहा कि हम ऐसा क्यों फील कर रहे हैं या क्या फील कर रहे हैं. तो आर्ट ट्राइज टू कैप्चर दैट. Art tries to capture that gray area. When science and maths is very black and white, art tries to go into that gray zone, which is why poetic devices come in handy. Okay? All right. So, all-rounding, Charan has given examples of poetic devices like simile, metaphor, and personification. Very good. Arnav has added more to that list with anaphora, metaphor. Metaphor was already given. Alliteration, repeated epithet, transferred epithet bhi hai. Okay, so we are going to look at the basic ones that are generally used and that can help you analyze any poem very easily. Okay, starting with simile. सिमिली देखते ही आपके दिमाग में 2 वर्ड्स आने चाहिए. वो 2 वर्ड्स क्या है? सिमिली देखते ही आपके दिमाग में 2 वर्ड्स आने चाहिए. What are those 2 words? Who's going to tell me? वेरी गुड विपिन, क्या बात है. वेरी गुड तन्मय, वेरी गुड एम्बिशन सक्सेस. जो 2 वर्ड्स आपके दिमाग में सिमिली देखते आने चाहिए वो है लाइक और एज. ओके, बिकॉज सिमिली और मेटाफर में जब हम डिफरेंस करने की कोशिश करते हैं, दोनों क्या करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं? कंपैरिजन करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं. पर सिमिली हमेशा लाइक और एज यूज करके कंपैरिजन करेगी. तो आप ये बोल सकते हो दैट सिमिली इज अ वेरी डायरेक्ट कंपैरिजन. वी आर directly comparing two things, whereas metaphor is more of an implied, implicit comparison. Okay, so when you compare two unlike things using like and as, then it's a simile. Now remember that just because a sentence has like or as doesn't make it a simile. There has to be a comparison between two things. There has to be a comparison between two things. So examples are the water was as cold as ice. We are comparing water और ice दोनों का temperature. Okay, her eyes sparkled like diamonds. We are comparing her eyes और diamonds का shine. Okay, I am as busy as a bee. So we are comparing, the speaker is comparing themselves and a bee and how busy they both are. Okay, as sweet as honey, as Little Star has said. Very good. You're comparing your sweetness or whoever you're talking about, their sweetness with the sweetness of honey. So there'll always be one quality that you are comparing. Okay, as clear as crystal. क्या बात है आस्था, very nice. Okay, as brave as a lion. Perfect. All right, now इसमें हम क्या कर सकते हैं? इसमें when we are comparing two qualities, instead of using like and as and making it a direct comparison, we can also remove that like and as and say that this water is ice. And जब हमने ये कर दिया कि is ice, that means we are saying that water is equal to ice, which we know is not true. Water is not is equal to ice. They are two different things. But it becomes obvious by saying that this water is ice. We are saying that this water is so cold that it might as well be ice because it's as cold as ice. So we are making a comparison, but instead of using like or as and making it obvious that we are making a comparison, we make it an implied comparison. तो जिसको समझ में आना चाहिए उसको समझ में आ जाएगा कि आप बोलने की क्या कोशिश कर रहे हो. ठीक है? This becomes a metaphor. So metaphor again compares a quality between two things, but it does not use like or as. Okay, it's done to emphasize a similarity, and we say that A is equal to B. That's what happens in metaphor. Instead of जो simile में हम like या as कर देते हैं, metaphor में हम is equal to कर देते हैं. Okay, so what are our examples here? Her smile was a ray of sunshine. Okay, that doesn't mean that there's this girl, okay, this is, and instead of a mouth she has a sun, and whenever she smiles उसमें से rays निकलती है. That's not what we are trying to say. Okay, that's not the meaning of this sentence. What we are trying to say is that when this girl smiles, she spread so much joy, which looks very scary in the drawing I made. Okay, better. So when this girl smiles, she spreads so much light and positivity and radiance that it feels like the rays of the sun is falling upon us. Okay? Alright? Got it? Then, next, the sun is a golden ball. This doesn't mean that you can play basketball with the sun because it's just a golden ball. No, we're just comparing the shape of the sun to a ball, and we're saying they're both golden. So the sun is a golden ball. Okay? Now her voice was music to his ears. Doesn't mean that her voice is literally music. It means that the voice sounded so good to this person's ears that it became music for his ears. Okay? Now, poetic license is when you bend the rules of grammar just so that it the sentence that you're trying to write fits in your poem. Okay? So you might change the sentence structure so that the word that you want at the end comes at the end, or you change the spelling of a certain word, or you don't follow a certain grammatical rule. That is poetic license. Okay? All right. Yes, she is the moon. You can say that. The difference between metaphor and personification, Arjun, is that personification is a kind of metaphor, but in personification we are giving human-like attributes to something that is not a human being, which is what we are going to do next. So let's just come to it. Okay? So it gives human qualities, human attributes to something that is non-human, like an object or an animal. Okay? So you can say that personification is actually a kind of metaphor. Okay? But the important thing in personification is something you can remember from the word person only in this, that you're giving person-like qualities, human-like qualities to somebody who's non-human. There are ample examples of poetic license. Whenever your sentence has been inversed, which happens in lot of your different poems. I think it happens in Dust of Snow. So whenever inversion is happening, that is poetic license that the poet has taken. Whether not following the exact sentence structure, but they are flipping it around just so it sounds better and fits in the meter of their poem. Okay? Very good, Asta. The sunflowers are smiling. Perfect. Sunflowers cannot actually smile, but if the sunflowers look nice, healthy and happy, you can say it seems like they are smiling. Okay? Alright. So then we have examples here. The wind whispered through the trees. The wind cannot actually whisper, but the sound that wind sometimes make, the shh sound, sounds like it's whispering. Okay? The dog asked his master to let him inside. Now the dog can't really ask, but we are personifying the dog by saying that he did ask. Okay? Alright, let's move on to the next, which is oxymoron. Okay? How can the trees sprint? Acha, the trees sprinting from the poem The Trees. Yes, I thought you were giving an isolated example. So trees can dance in the wind, but yeah, in a very specific context, trees sprinting makes sense and it becomes a personification. Now, they talked to the flowers में they कौन है? जो they है, वो बात कर रहा है तो वो अगर human है तो वो बात कर सकता है. The flowers talked to each other will become a personification, okay? When the tree branches hit the door, tree is knocking the door. Yes, that's personification. Okay. Book. Now books are giving you wings. इसमें first of all, human beings don't have wings, तो वो personification तो हुआ नहीं ना. And next, we're not giving any human-like attributes to the book. Okay? Alright, what else? Yes, you're giving me an example of oxymoron, quiet rage, from your Tiger in the Zoo poem. Very good. Silent scream. Yes, perfect. Daffodils by William Wordsworth is a brilliant poem. Great example. Okay. So, oxymoron के examples आप मुझे दे ही चुके हो. अब समझ लेते हैं कि oxymoron होता क्या है. It combines contradictory words. मतलब words जिनके opposite meanings होते हैं, हम उनको साथ में use करते हैं. और ये कॉन्ट्राडिक्टरी इमोशंस एक्सप्रेस करने के लिए होता है. कभी कभार आपको दो इमोशन साथ में फील हो रहे होते हैं, आपको समझ में नहीं आ रहा होता, वैसी चीजें, कॉन्ट्राडिक्टरी चीजें एक्सप्रेस करने के लिए हम लोग ऑक्सीमोरॉन यूज करते हैं. ओके, नाउ हियर वी हैव एग्जांपल्स. ओल्ड न्यूज. नाउ द नेचर ऑफ न्यूज इज सच दैट इट हैज टू बी न्यू, बट कभी कभार जब खबर पुरानी हो जाती है तो हम उसको ओल्ड न्यूज बोलते हैं. दैट्स an oxymoron. Okay, deafening silence. Sometimes it's so quiet that you are just longing कि कोई कुछ तो बोल दे, कोई कहीं से तो आवाज आ जाए, वरना ऐसा लग रहा है कि साइलेंस बहुत लाउड हो रही है मेरे लिए. So that's deafening silence. Okay. Yes, Arjun. Very good. Okay. Yes, a pet dragon can also be an oxymoron because dragon, by its very nature, is something that cannot be a pet. Okay? So this is your favorite figure of speech. Oxymoron. Yes, it's very fun to play around with oxymorons. Okay? And you can find a number of examples. Sometimes, जैसे when you're graduating from school, जैसे आप एक हो सकता है जब आप 12th से पास आउट करोगे सब लोग, आपको खुशी भी हो रही होगी, एक्साइटमेंट भी हो रही होगी कि आप कॉलेज जाने वाले हो, आपकी लाइफ एकदम चेंज होने वाली है, यू विल हैव अ लॉट ऑफ एक्साइटमेंट, पर आपको थोड़ा बुरा भी लग रहा होगा. वेरी गुड लिटिल स्टार, दैट्स द एग्जांपल दैट आई वाज ट्राइंग टू गिव. आपको बुरा भी लगेगा कि मेरी कितनी यादें हैं स्कूल में, आई स्पेंट such a major part of my life here, I'm going to miss all my friends, I'm going to miss all my daily routine, I'm going to miss coming to school. तो वो bitter sweet feeling हो जाती है. Okay? बिटर स्वीट फीलिंग, जिसमें आपको अच्छा भी लग रहा है पर आपको बुरा भी लग रहा है. सो ऑक्सीमोरॉन ऐसे इमोशंस को एक्सप्रेस करने में बहुत काम आता है. ओके, ऑलराइट. नेक्स्ट वी हैव अलिटरेशन. नाउ अलिटरेशन क्या है? इट्स अ रेपिटेशन ऑफ द सेम साउंड. ओके, सो एंड इट्स गोइंग टू बी at the beginning of closely connected words. So they can be right next to each other or they can be एक word छोड़ के also in a sentence. ठीक है? Example, Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Okay, इसमें Sally sells seashells by the seashore, और इसमें हम बोल सकते हैं कि consonants भी हो रहा है, जिसमें ये जो sh sound है जो word के बीच में है वो भी repeat हो रहा है. So, Sally sells seashells by the seashore. So, tongue twisters में आपको alliteration बहुत देखने को मिलेगा. आपको कोई किसी भी चीज को एकदम से catchy बनाना है, you need to grab people's attention, then you can use alliteration, which is why a lot of talk, मतलब the one thing that's coming to my mind right now is a famous talk show that you all might know about. उसमें उन्होंने alliteration use किया है. बहुत सारी ads, jingles में alliteration use होती है. ओके, लाइक बहुत सारे ब्रांड नेम्स, प्रोडक्ट नेम्स में alliteration यूज होती है ताकि लोगों को याद रहे, बिकॉज इट बिकम्स ईजियर टू रिमेंबर. ओके, एंड अपार्ट फ्रॉम टंग ट्विस्टर्स, पोएम्स में जब हम alliteration यूज करते हैं तो उस पोएम में बहुत अच्छा रिदम मिलता है, एंड व्हेन यू आर रीडिंग इट आउट लाउड तो वो रिदम बहुत अच्छा साउंड करता है. ठीक है? द सॉन्ग ऑफ स्वीट बर्ड्स, सॉन्ग ऑफ स्वीट बर्ड्स. ओके, be careful that it's always, yes, Belinda was as brave as a barrel full of bears. Now see, when I say it out loud, it sounds nice and catchy and fun to say out loud, right? That's why alliteration is used. And make sure that it's the same sound and not the same letter, because sometimes letters can make different sounds. Okay, and you want to make sure that a sound is being repeated, not just a letter. Okay, wind god winnows. Perfect. Little girl is lucky. Works. Okay. Next we have hyperbole. Something, repetition and alliteration are not the same. Now alliteration is you're purposely repeating a specific sound in closely connected words. Repetition can be the repetition of anything. So it can be the repetition of a word, it can be repetition of a phrase, it can be repetition of an entire sentence. Okay? So they're not the same thing. Don't get confused, okay? Now, hyperbole is an exaggeration, and hyperbole must be your favorite because a lot of you love exaggerating, I'm pretty sure. Okay? So, yeah, my mother would kill me. Now, your mother won't actually kill you. She's just going to scold you if you do something naughty. But what will you say as a hyperbole? My mother's going to kill me if I do this. Okay? So, no, Kumud, alliteration always has to be in closely connected words. तभी वो सुनाई देगा ना. अगर मैं अपने स्टैंजा के बिगिनिंग में एक डाल दूँ वर्ड और सेम साउंड वाला एंड में डाल दूँ तो उनका कोई रिलेशनशिप ही नहीं होगा आपस में. उनको साथ में बोलोगे तभी वो सुनाई देगा ना. तो alliteration always has to be एकदम ही adjacent words में या closely connected words में. तो आप एक एक वर्ड छोड़ के कर सकते हो, पर एक एक लाइन छोड़ के नहीं कर सकते. ओके? Alright, so it's an extreme exaggeration. तो exaggeration और hyperbole में ये फर्क है कि exaggeration can still be doable. Hyperbole ऐसी होगी कि वो करना impossible होगा. ठीक है? So when you say I'm so hungry I could eat a horse, you can't actually eat a horse, but you're just trying to express how hungry you feel. Now, like I told you, language is all about, it's not about communicating just facts. जैसे हम साइंस या मैथ्स में करते हैं कि ये फैक्ट है, इसको एज फैक्ट ही बताएंगे. A language is about communicating how you feel. And different people can feel differently about different things. तो वो feeling express करना ज़्यादा ज़रूरी है instead of exactly. अगर आप बोलोगे कि I am so hungry that I can eat exactly 2 parathas with dahi, then you are expressing a fact कि मुझे exactly इतनी ही भूख लगी है. पर उसमें आपकी feeling नहीं समझ आई. अब आपको इतनी भूख लग रही है, आप बताने की कोशिश करो कि मेरे को इतनी भूख लग रही है, मैं इंसान खा जाऊंगा अभी. तो इसमें I understand how you're feeling because you're hungry. Okay? So that's the difference between art and science, like I was telling you. You are trying to express feelings, you're trying to express emotions. Hyperbole can be very useful in doing that. Okay? Okay, now Vipin, you are stating a hyperbole as a fact. Hyperbole is when you say I ate an elephant, then you're making it seem like you actually did eat an elephant, which is not the case. So it needs to be a little obvious that what you're doing is, and what you're saying is an exaggeration, okay? All right. Dying out of hunger, crying a river, very good little star. Perfect. Okay. Here are more examples. I've been waiting for you forever. Can you actually wait forever? No, that's not possible. But इतना लंबा वेट कराया कि forever की तरह feel हो रहा था. My name is Ozymandias, king of kings. Kids just exaggerating how great Ozymandias thinks he is. Okay? All right. So now let's come to our sample analysis. Okay? Here's Dust of Snow by Robert Frost. Let's see what all we have here. And here we're going to look at some other things. So, ये poetic devices जो बहुत common है, जो आपको easily spot हो जाएंगे, we have been through them. Now, let's take a look at some other things that you can find in poetry, okay? So, Dust of Snow में The Way a Crow Shook Down on Me. इसमें भी you've used a sentence structure that's different from how you would normally speak, right? So you can say this is poetic license. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow from a hemlock tree, has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I rued. Okay, very beautiful small poem, short poem by Robert Frost, talks about how these negative things, एकदम ही स्नो है हर जगह, एकदम से डिप्रेसिंग सा फील आता है उसमें. हेमलॉक ट्री विच इज़ अ नेगेटिव सिंबल, एक कौवा आता है विच इज़ ऑल्सो कंसिडर्ड अ नेगेटिव वुमन, एंड एवरीथिंग दैट दीज नेगेटिव थिंग्स डू come together and do actually has a positive impact on the poet. Okay, so here what can you tell me where we can find alliteration? And ninth वाले भी try कर सकते हैं ये. Even though this is not in your syllabus, it's going to be in your syllabus at some point, okay? Are Arjun, why are you feeling disheartened? You will get your good luck. Okay, very good. Saved some part of a day I wrote, and can use has given my heart also as alliteration. Okay, perfect. And who can tell me what enjambment is? What is enjambment? It's a kind of device that's used in poetry a lot. What do you call जब consonant sound किसी भी part में, like it doesn't have to be in the beginning of a word, it can be in the middle of a word also. When that's being repeated, we call it consonants. And जब ये vowel sound के साथ होता है, we call it assonance. Okay? Got it, Kumud? Yes, so when you're breaking a sentence down, so this sentence is one sentence. The way a crow shook down on me, the dust of snow. In fact, entirety of this can be one sentence. But when we are breaking it down, that is enjambment. So enjambment is being used continuously throughout in this poem. Okay? Yes, same sentence runs into the next line. Very good, Akifa. Very nicely you have put it. Okay? Perfect. Now let's take a look at another poem that is by Robert Frost. Robert Frost has written such great poems with so much meaning in such a, I mean they are very small poems और आपको नहीं लगेगा कि इतने छोटे पैकेट में इतना कुछ मिल सकता है आपको. But when you read them again and again, you realize that there's so much meaning behind all of these poems. Correct? Varun, you are saying ulta. Assonance. Consonant. Consonants. Okay? And I gave you an example in seashells sitting on the seashore. So, seashells and seashore में जो sound है, ये repeat हो रहा है in the middle of the word. Beginning में नहीं repeat हो रहा. Anaphora is a repetition, but it has to be in the first, it has to be the first word in 2 consecutive lines. First word or first phrase in 2 consecutive lines. ठीक है? Got it? Refrain is the repetition. It's also kind of repetition, but it will be a repetition of an entire phrase or an entire sentence throughout the poem. So when you are repeating a phrase or a sentence throughout the poem, that is the refrain. Okay? Alright. So, here we have, some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I've tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. So here also we've broken down what should be one sentence into multiple sentences so that we can get a rhyme, correct? And also so that the poem can fall in a certain meter. So here, alright, as the world will, alliteration, very good. Favor fire, alliteration, very good. Great job. Perfect. What about anaphora? We just talked about it. So where do you find anaphora over here? Very easily spot कर सकते हो आप. So many alliterative words. In ice. In ice. Both are making different sounds. Just because they start with the same letter doesn't make it alliterative. It also has to have the same sound. Yes, very good, Kumud. Some say repeated in the first 2 lines, anaphora. Okay? Perfect. And इस poem में भी और last वाली poem में भी enjambment तो था ही. Okay? Enjambment दोनों में था. एक और चीज थी दोनों में. Now when you read this poem, you can first imagine कि पूरी दुनिया है और उसको fire engulf कर रही है. Okay? And then when you read the second part of the poem, you can see कि पूरी दुनिया है उसको आइस टेक ओवर कर रही है और वो फ्रीज कर रही है. तो क्या बना? इमेजरी बनी. वेरी गुड अक्षित. परफेक्ट. ग्रेट जॉब. एंड ये इमेजरी पहली डस्ट और स्नो में भी थी. जब आपको दिख रहा है, आप क्लियरली इमेजिन कर सकते हो कि स्नो है हर जगह, पेड़ है, उस पे आके कौवा बैठता है, वो थोड़ा सा शेक करके स्नो गिराता है पोएट के ऊपर. करेक्ट? सो imagery is being used in both these poems. Okay? Alright, now here we have a very fun poem. How many of you remember this poem? Give me thumbs up if you remember this poem. Yes, very good Akshay. Dust of snow has symbolism also. So what are hemlock tree, crow, ये सब क्या है? They're symbols. What do they represent? They represent negative things. Okay? Kumud, you can say personification is there in fire and ice because fire is destroying. You're giving it sort of a human quality, that it is going out of its way with a vengeance to destroy, which is something humans do. Non-human चीज़ों में ये इंटेंशन नहीं होती ना कि मैं तुम्हें डिस्ट्रॉय करूँगा क्योंकि मेरे को ये पसंद नहीं है, या ये जो वेंजेंस की फीलिंग है या रिवेंज की फीलिंग है या गुस्से की फीलिंग है, ये सब सिर्फ ह्यूमन बींग्स में होती है और किसी नॉन ह्यूमन ऑब्जेक्ट में नहीं होगी, तो आप कह सकते हो कि आप फायर और आइस को ह्यूमन क्वालिटीज दे रहे हो. ये काफी डीप लेवल पे आप कह सकते हो पर्सोनिफिकेशन है. ओके, यस यस, वन ऑफ योर फेवरेट पोएम्स आस्करल, वेरी गुड. Yes, euphemism is also a poetic device. Very good. So you like Macavity? It's such a fun poem. I really love this poem. 10th वालों को याद है, 9th वालों को तो याद होगा, लास्ट ईयर ही पढ़ा था. इल्यूजन नहीं, अल्यूजन होता है पोएटिक डिवाइस. ओके, सो Macavity is a poem from a very famous book by T.S. Eliot, which is all about cats. So those of you who love cats will definitely love all the poems that T.S. Eliot has written about cats. And those of you who know about the Broadway musical Cats, that's also based on this book, okay? So all the characters in it actually have the names of the cats that are in the poems. There's a character from Macavity also. And हमारा Macavity क्या है? Evil character है, okay? It's a mastermind, हिडन पॉ, क्राइम करता है, पता भी नहीं चलता है. ओके, और पूरा स्कॉटलैंड यार्ड उसके पीछे पड़ा हुआ है पर कोई उसको पकड़ नहीं पा रहा है. ओके, सो Macavity is a mystery cat. He's called the hidden paw, for he's the master criminal who can defy the law. He's the bafflement of Scotland Yard, the flying squad's despair. For when they reach the scene of crime, Macavity is not there. Macavity, there's no one like Macavity. He's broken every human law. He breaks the law of gravity. His powers of levitation would make a fakir stare. And when you reach the scene of crime, Macavity is not there. You may seek him in the basement, you may look up in the air, but I tell you once and once again, Macavity is not there. Okay, so what are some of the fun things that you find in this Macavity poem? Let me underline it for you. What is this? Author's tone में confusion, क्या confusion कशिश होता है? When you understand why the author is writing something, what is the message they're trying to give through the poem, you'll easily understand the tone. क्या है ये जो मैंने underline किया है? Anaphora always happens in the beginning. Yes, this is repetition. Of what kind of repetition can you say? What kind of repetition? Very good, Siddhant. Refrain. Very good. Perfect. So, because it's an entire sentence actually that we're repeating, Macavity is not there, Macavity is not there. Okay, so we can call it a refrain. Okay. Then Macavity का नाम का repetition तो throughout ही, ये तो Macavity is not there, यहाँ पे भी आ रहा है. So this is a refrain. And नाम का repetition तो throughout the poem हो रहा है. So Macavity को हम बोल सकते हैं कि repetition हो रहा है. Okay. And it's such a fun poem to read. And you can say इस poem को पढ़ोगे तो आप tone क्या figure out कर सकते हो? Is the poet trying to say कि Macavity बहुत ही खराब है? You know, Macavity doesn't deserve anybody's attention? Or do you think the poet is actually in awe of how skilled Macavity is? That he can do so many things. He can break every human law, laws of gravity. He can levitate. When you reach a scene of crime, he's not there. And here, the poet is also vouching for Macavity. But I tell you once and once again, Macavity is not there. So, we can say here, yes, you can say the cat is personified, of course. You can see here that the poet is actually in awe of Macavity. तो वो एक्चुअली तारीफ कर रहा है Macavity की कि Macavity इतना ज्यादा टैलेंटेड है, देखो. ठीक है? So that's how you understand the tone of the poem. Just by reading this, हमें tone से समझ में आ गया कि the poet is not reprimanding or not saying bad things about Macavity. The poet is actually in awe of how talented Macavity is as a criminal. Okay? इससे आपको tone का समझ में आया? Oxymoron और poetic license तो एकदम चीज है. Poetic license is when you bend the rules of grammar, when you change sentence structure in a way that the sentence fits your poem properly. ठीक है, तो आपको पोएम का जो स्ट्रक्चर है, जो एस्थेटिक है, वो ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है देन फॉलोइंग द रूल्स ऑफ ग्रामर एकदम प्रॉपर्ली, ठीक है। तो आप ग्रामर के रूल्स थोड़े से चेंज कर सकते हो, स्पेलिंग्स थोड़े से चेंज कर सकते हो, ताकि आपकी पोएम बेटर साउंड करे, वो पोएटिक लाइसेंस हो गया। ऑक्सीमोरॉन इज जब आप दो वर्ड्स को साथ में बोल रहे हो जिनके एकदम कॉन्ट्रडिक्टरी ऑपोजिट मीनिंग्स है, ठीक है। ओके, I already read the poem. You can rewind and listen to it again. Although this poem is so much fun to read, you should try doing it there. Okay? Make a fakir stare. आप make fakir का साउंड रिपीट तो हो रहा है पर इतना अपेरेंट नहीं है. सो लॉट ऑफ टाइम्स कोइंसिडेंटली भी साउंड रिपीट हो सकता है, जरूरी नहीं है इंटेंशनली किया हो. अगर पोएट इंटेंशनली करेगा तो वो एकदम स्ट्राइक करेगा आपको, वो एकदम अलग से आपको फील होगा कि हाँ ये इंटेंशनली किया है. ये सारे रूल्स इंपॉर्टेंट है 10th के लिए. एवरीथिंग वी डिस्कस, रेपिटेशन, एनाफोरा, मेटाफर, सिमिली, ऑक्सीमोरॉन, हाइपरबोली, ऑल ऑफ दीज कैन बी आस्क्ड टू यू आपके एग्जाम में, ठीक है. सो यू शुड हैव अ basic clear idea of all of them. Obviously before your exam we'll go through each poem and हम डिटेल में देखेंगे कि किस पोएम में कौन सा पोएटिक डिवाइस यूज हो रहा है. बट आई ऑलवेज से कि हमेशा रट्टा मत मारो, क्योंकि आप रट्टा मारोगे आज कि आपके इस पोएम में ये यूज हो रहा है, चांसेस आर यू विल फॉरगेट. पर आपको अगर हर पोएम का हर पोएटिक डिवाइस का मीनिंग समझ में आ रहा है तो आपको रट्टा मारने की जरूरत नहीं है, आप उसको पढ़ के ही एनालाइज कर लोगे. दैट्स व्हाई वी आर अंडरस्टैंडिंग हाउ टू एनालाइज अ पोएम इंस्टेड ऑफ जस्ट रट्टोफाइंग कि कौन सा पोएटिक डिवाइस कहाँ पे यूज होता है. दिस वे यू कैन एनालाइज एनी पोएम इन द वर्ल्ड. ओके, ऑल राइट, that's okay, Akshit. You can try a little harder next time. Neelam, congratulations. Great job. Okay? Metaphor, Kumud, we've already done, so you can go back and take a look at it. Okay? Alright, so in conclusion, here are some tips. Always know the context of the poem. आपको context से ही tone, mood, theme सब समझ में आ जाएगा. एक बार ही आप poem पढ़ोगे, मैंने क्या कहा था, first reading is like the skeleton. सेकेंड रीडिंग आप उसके अंदर और क्या है वो देख पाओगे, फ्लैश, स्किन देख पाओगे. स्किन तो बाहर होती है उसके अंदर, ठीक है. हम स्केलेटन देख लिया, उसके अंदर आप देख पाओगे कि कौन से डिफरेंट सिस्टम्स है बॉडी के, ठीक है. उसके अंदर आप फिर उसका ब्लड जान पाओगे. तो ऐसे ऐसे धीरे धीरे करके आप एकदम मॉलिक्यूलर लेवल पे आ सकते हो एक पोएम के, द नंबर ऑफ टाइम्स यू रीड इट. सो फर्स्ट रीडिंग विल जस्ट बी द स्केलेटन ऑफ द पोएम, एंड वंस यू अंडरस्टैंड द स्केलेटन, उससे आपको टोन, मूड, थीम, ये सब कुछ समझ में आ जाएगा. एक और बार पढ़ोगे, लुक आउट फॉर द डिफरेंट पोएटिक डिवाइसेस दैट आर यूज्ड. डिस्कस पर्सनल रिस्पॉन्स, सी हाउ यू फेल्ट आफ्टर रीडिंग द पोएम. Analyze your own interpretation of the poem. Your interpretation can be different from somebody else's interpretation. At the end of the day, you can compare. तो आप अपनी interpretation तो पहले समझो, फिर दूसरे की interpretation समझना. Okay? All right? And then you can seek feedback on your interpretation. So what you can do is, once you have understood what your interpretation is, you can talk to your friends and say कि क्या जो मुझे समझ में आया तुम्हें भी वही समझ में आया. या आप इंटरनेट पे जाके उस पोएम का एक्सप्लेनेशन ढूंढो, तो आप ढूंढ के देखो कि क्या यही है जो जनरली लोगों को समझ में आता है कि मुझे कुछ और ही समझ में आ गया. आप कभी कभार पोएट का पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू भी आपको मिल जाएगा पोएम को से रिलेटेड, कि पोएट ने क्यों लिखी थी, कब लिखी थी, तो उससे भी आपको आइडिया मिल जाएगा, ठीक है. एंड आर्ट इज ऑलवेज पर्सनल. जिसने भी लिखा है, जिसने भी बनाया है, उसने दुनिया में डाला है आपके लिए, और जब आप उसको पढ़ रहे हो वो आपका हो जाएगा. ऑब्वियसली इंटेलेक्चुअल प्रॉपर्टी पेंटर या ऑथर या पोएट की ही रहेगी ऑलवेज, बट व्हेन यू आर रीडिंग इट यू विल हैव एन इमोशनल रिस्पॉन्स टू इट. इट बिकम्स योर्स, इट बिकम्स पर्सनल. ऑलवेज ट्रीट इट पर्सनली. डोंट एवर ट्रीट द पोएम्स इन योर सिलेबस और द स्टोरीज इन योर सिलेबस एज अरे यार ये पढ़ाई है, ये करनी पड़ेगी. नो, दीज आर थिंग्स दैट पीपल रीड टू एनहांस देयर ओन लाइव्स, फॉर एंटरटेनमेंट, to get to know the world better. So you should approach it in the same way. तो आपको पढ़ाई नहीं लगेगी, ठीक है. All right. So a lot of you are giving me poem recommendations. If you like some poem, if you wish that maybe we could discuss it someday, please drop them in the comments. I will definitely read those poems. if I haven't already, and then we can discuss our own interpretations after your exams are all done and we have some time. Okay? Maybe I can share a poem that I wrote. Maybe you can share poems that you wrote in the chat. Okay? So we can develop this love for poetry together, because it's a very, very beautiful thing if you try doing it. Okay? Try to put down your thoughts in the form of a poem and see how accomplished and how good you will feel once you're done writing it. Okay? All right. And do leave your amazing poem recommendations in the comments for me. I would love to read some good poems, and I always, because I appreciate all forms of poetry, they can be the languages that I know are Hindi. I can understand Urdu poetry, I can understand Punjabi poetry, and of course English. So you can drop your recommendations in any of these languages. Okay? Alright, thank you so much. So Akshit, yes, we have sessions coming up on all of these things. So we will do all of that together before your final exams. Don't worry. The fact that you've recognized that you have potential and you can do better, you will definitely do better. Okay? All poems are important, Divya. There's no such thing as most important poem. Okay? Bye. Have a great evening ahead. Okay? See you. And always, like always, a reminder to like the videos if they're helping you, and do subscribe to the channel. If you haven't already, please go hit that subscribe button before you log out of whatever it is that you're watching this on. Okay? Alright. Have a great, great evening ahead. I will see you soon.